On 5 News, capping the wages of top earners and managing immigration. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn outlines his vision for Brexit Britain. Also, a new warning from frontline medics about the crisis in A&E. They say more than a third of accident and emergency departments are now dangerously overcrowded. A 15-year-old girl is arrested over the death of a 7-year-old in York. The staggering amount of food we're wasting and the tips to save us money, plus.
You've done nothing to be ashamed of. You're alone with 2 kids. You've done amazing.
The British drama taking on La La Land in the battle for the BAFTAs. We hear from the man behind it. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has denied changing his stance on immigration in the wake of the Brexit vote, after previously appearing to be staunchly behind freedom of movement. In a major speech today, he said the party was not wedded to the idea, but he didn't want that to be misinterpreted, and he didn't want to rule it out either. Well, if that left some confused, then his earlier comments on capping high wages caught out some of his own MPs too. So what do voters make of it? Our political editor Andy Bell asked the people of Peterborough.
Peterborough voted strongly for Brexit, but not so long ago the city had a Labour MP. So could this be a target for the opposition? Jeremy Corbyn thinks so. The Labour leader chose to come here to give a speech to launch him into the new year. But even before that, he'd opened up a surprise new line of attack, suggesting government should intervene to cap excessive earnings.
I would like to see a maximum earnings limit, quite honestly, because I think that would be a fairer thing to do. Because we cannot set ourselves up as being a sort of grossly unequal bargain basement economy on the shores of Europe. We have to be something that is more egalitarian.
Not surprisingly, that's gone down badly with the bosses.
There are very few countries in the rest of the world that have followed this path, and their economies, thinking specifically of Cuba and Venezuela, are not necessarily ones that the United Kingdom might want to emulate in a post-European Union world. We need to send a message to the globe, to the global business community, that we're open, that we're ambitious and that we're entrepreneurial, and that success is celebrated, not punished.
Back in the city centre, we found those weren't necessarily the magic words.
There's a naivety to it and a lack of pragmatism and practicality.
I feel that's the wrong approach. I think if we just ensured that high earners paid their fair share of tax, that should be enough to do it.
Jeremy Corbyn's speech was mainly about Brexit, and on immigration, he refused to commit to bringing the numbers down.
Unlike the Tories, we won't offer any false promises or sow division by scapegoating migrants, because we know where that leads to. The worrying and, to me, frightening rise in race hate crime and division in recent months, and how the issue of immigration can be used as a proxy to abuse or intimidate minority communities within our society. We're not wedded to free movement to the EU as a point of principle, but I don't want to be misinterpreted, nor do we rule it out.
Jeremy Corbyn says he doesn't want to set a target of bringing it down. Do you think he's right?
I think he should. No, I think he should bring it down. Yeah, I do. I hope so, because as I say, I think there's too many.
I think he's right not to set a target, because if he does make a target and then doesn't follow through with it, it's going to make him look worse.
I think he needs a clearer position on it. I don't think it can be so woolly and so vague.
The Labour leader's been marginalised by Brexit. He and his party have to find a distinctive approach to the biggest challenge facing the country today.
Let's talk to Andy now. He's still in Peterborough. One of the voters called his policies woolly and vague, Andy. I mean, has Jeremy Corbyn been clear enough on those 2 issues, the high earners and the immigration?
No, Sian, I think we've been marched up the hill and down again today, to be frank. First of all, maximum wages. Certainly in that radio interview, it sounded as if he wanted to bring in a cap on maximum wages. By the time of the speech tonight, we were talking much more about taxing more the very highest earners. And then when it comes to immigration, we'd been briefed that he was going to say that Labour was not wedded to free movement. He did say that, but he then said, we're not ruling it out. And after his speech, I asked him, did he think that Britain would be a better place, or it would be better for Britain with less immigration over the next 5 5 years? Essentially, he didn't answer and stressed instead the benefits of migration in this country, and certainly many in his own party feel on that issue, on immigration especially, if he's going to hang on to Labour voters, he's going to have to take a tougher line.
Andy, thanks. Just how many accident and emergency departments in England are struggling to cope this winter? Well, the Health Secretary told us yesterday he's only worried about a few. But today, the group that represents A&E doctors says more than a third are dangerously overcrowded. Our health correspondent Catherine Jones has the details.
In hospitals across England, the pressure is unrelenting. Winter always brings more frail and elderly people in, but this year our wards are fuller than ever. So more patients than ever are ending up stuck in A&E, like Philip, who spent 6 hours on a trolley after suffering a mini stroke last week.
The scene is very, very depressing and worrying, because you immediately see these trolleys with people in various states of physical breakdown. As I said, some of them have got masks on, so they're quite seriously ill. They lay out flat, they're not moving at all.
Yesterday, the Health Secretary told me only a limited number of hospitals were struggling.
There's a few hospitals which have had very sustained and difficult problems.
Today, A&E doctors spoke out to challenge that view. There are 152 hospital trusts in England, each with a target of dealing with 95% of A&E patients within 4 hours. But a snapshot survey by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine suggests 4 out of 10 A&E departments in England are only managing to deal with 75% of patients within that target time.
There is a real crisis out there, and I do not know what world the Secretary of State inhabits, but it's not the world that my colleagues in A&E departments throughout the country are experiencing on a day-by-day basis at the moment.
Last night on his way home, surgeon Rishi Deer came across a cyclist who'd been hit by a car.
So this is an emergency. You can't move these patients because they could potentially be paralysed.
At work and off duty, he sees a service stretched beyond its limits.
I called the ambulance and they told me that they'd be at least 50 minutes for a trauma patient who was an absolute emergency. And then on coming to work this morning, I found that my operating list, because I work as a surgeon, we didn't have the beds available to do the non-emergency operations as well. This is a problem because of underfunding, because of cutting throughout hospitals, and something needs to be done about it.
The usual pattern is for winter pressures to peak in the third week of January. That's next week. And with freezing temperatures forecast, which always increases demand, A&E staff and their colleagues across the NHS can only brace themselves for the days ahead. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
A 15-year-old girl is being questioned by police over the death of a 7-year-old girl who was found in a field near houses in York. Witnesses have described hearing the young girl's mother crying and screaming after she arrived at the scene yesterday afternoon. Understandably, it's left the community in shock. From York, Peter Lane reports.
The white suits of forensic officers and a police tent sealing off the spot on the outskirts of York where the 7-year-old girl was found yesterday afternoon with what police described as life-threatening injuries. She was taken to hospital but couldn't be saved. Witnesses say the girl's mother was among the first to get to the scene. Rob McCartney lives just metres away from where the girl was found.
A woman ran up the street. That was obviously the mother of the daughter. She was shouting help, called for an ambulance. So I put my shoes on and went to go up the alleyway. And I got halfway up and I could see a body lying in the field, but the police were already there attending. And then the mother had come down and she was obviously very, very distraught. After we asked her, was she okay? She said, no, I think she's killed her.
The street leading to the footpath and field beyond has been cordoned off for most of the day. Police say a 15-year-old girl was arrested in connection with the death last night, and they've described this as a particularly sensitive case.
15-year-old girl has been arrested in connection with the incident and remains in police custody. Officers have conducted house-to-house inquiries in the area and remain working at the scene while the investigation continues. Specially trained officers are supporting the victim's family at this extremely difficult time for them.
As word spread, well-wishers brought flowers to the street. Unable to understand what had happened here, but moved to pay their respects. One bouquet had a handwritten message reading, "Night night, my darling princess, love Nana and Grandad." Well, it's 24 hours now since police were first called to this incident, and there is still much that's not clear. Why the 7-year-old girl was on that footpath in the first place. She didn't live in this street. What kind of injuries she had, how she came to die, and police still haven't confirmed her identity. What we do know this evening is that the 15-year-old girl who was arrested is still being questioned.
Peter, thank you. Coming up on 5 News. More strike misery for Southern Rail passengers. We put the unions and the rail company on the spot.
Why is the management of Southern Rail so bad at planning ahead that they've allowed this situation to happen?
And could this British drama silence the big Hollywood musical La La Land at the BAFTAs? We'll see you after the break. Hello and welcome back. You're watching 5 News. They pay thousands of pounds a year for a service to get to work, appointments or to visit friends and relatives. But once again today, Southern Rail passengers have had their plans thrown into chaos because of a strike. It's the first walkout of 2017 after plenty last year. And it's all because bosses and unions can't resolve their row about driver-only trains. Dominic Reynolds reports.
Take a look at the battle lines in the country's most bitter industrial dispute. No movement at all this morning. It is the 31st day of Southern Rail industrial action in 9 months, and there are 5 more days to come before the end of January. Here is one of the line's 300,000 daily passengers, and in Surrey, Jackie's just lost another day of income. She's a freelance London tour guide who can't get to London.
It's ridiculous. If this was a natural disaster causing the delays, one wouldn't mind. But this is an artificial situation which they need to sort out.
But even when there isn't a strike, Jackie says being a Southern passenger is hard work. In this stack, just her most recent claims for compensation because trains were over 30 minutes late. The dispute is about whether some responsibilities can be taken away from conductors and given to train drivers. And in an empty Victoria station, Southern Rail insisted they're not preparing the ground for job cuts.
Now, I'm not one of your commuters. Jackie is. This is what she wanted to ask you.
Why is the management of Southern Rail so bad at planning ahead that they've allowed this situation to happen? Were they looking for a fight with the unions at the commuters' expense?
Well, we absolutely don't want to pick a fight with the unions, and we don't want our passengers left in the middle. The changes that we're making here happen every single day. It's not new.
But it leaves the door open in the future for those jobs to be removed, doesn't it?
So to demonstrate our commitment to having a second person on the train, we are recruiting an extra 100 people to make sure that we have sufficient staff to be able to roster on the train.
And do the unions understand quite how exasperated passengers are?
One way or another, they want this to end. What would you say to them?
Well, we want it to end. You know, it's not in our interest for drivers to be losing money.
Do you think that you're losing a bit of sympathy with the way this is dragging on?
Well, if I had to pay some of the fares that some of these people have to pay and haven't had a pay rise for years and see some of the comparisons that are being made, I fully understand it.
Both sides say they sympathise with commuters, but neither's budged an inch for a long time. What happens in this dispute will likely affect future decisions on other UK services. So the outcome of this southern battle could go far beyond the south. Dominic Reynolds, 5 News.
A strike by British Airways cabin crew has led to a small number of flights from Heathrow Airport being cancelled. They've walked out in a row about pay. BA says passengers on 22 flights had to fly out earlier or later than they'd planned. Police are investigating after a small number of saline bags appear to have been tampered with at Cumberland Infirmary. Hospital bosses found out last week and say there's no indication any patients have been harmed. And the Post Office has announced the closure of 37 more branches with the loss of around 300 jobs. It says the move is because of changing consumer habits and the high cost of maintaining some premises. If you're about to sit down for your evening meal, here's something to think about. How much of it will end up in the bin? Well, for many of us, probably too much. New figures show that in 2015, households across the UK threw away £13 billion worth of food that could have been eaten. Tessa Chapman looks at what's being done about our waste.
Top of the list of the foods we waste is bread. Every day 24 million slices end up in the bin. Many of our other staples go the same way. It doesn't make sense for our pockets or the planet, but we're still doing it. Do you eat all the food you buy?
Not all of it, no. Sometimes I throw it away.
I think everybody does.
And why is that, do you think?
Maybe they buy too much.
A lot of offers. So you're asked, buy one, get another one half price.
An estimated 7.3 million tonnes of food waste was thrown away in 2015, the first rise in 10 years. More than half of it could have been eaten. That's enough to fill 37 million wheelie bins, or nearly 500,000 bin lorries. It's thought falling prices might have made us less careful. There are calls for the food industry to do more. Some of Britain's biggest retailers are trying out new ideas. Here in Sainsbury's, they've already completely stopped multi-buy offers to encourage customers to only buy what they need. And they're testing out a new smartphone app, which can see inside your fridge. So while you're shopping, you can check what you've run out of. The group which compiled today's data say we all need to take responsibility.
Make a list when you go shopping, and then you don't end up buying things you don't need maybe. Secondly, once you've done that, think about what the meals are that you're going to be cooking with it. Once you've cooked the meal, while you're doing it, make sure you measure the right amount so that you don't cook too much. And then if you do have some leftovers, because maybe somebody didn't end up there for dinner, put it in a little tub, keep it in the fridge, freeze it for lunch in a few days' time.
Simple advice, but we're not all taking it on board. And the food waste mountain continues to grow. Tessa Chapman, 5 News.
Well, if you want more tips on how to cut down on unnecessary waste in your house, just head to our Facebook page. You search for Channel 5 News and you'll find some handy pointers there. Football's World Cup is about to get even bigger. The tournament, which was last won by Germany in 2014, currently involves 32 teams, but from 2026 it's being expanded to 48. FIFA says it'll make it more inclusive. Now, one is a rich, effervescent musical about making it big in Hollywood. The other, an unflinching examination about trying to make ends meet below the poverty line in Newcastle. But both La La Land and I, Daniel Blake, are up for a BAFTA for Best Film. Ken Loach's portrayal of life on benefits has received 5 nominations overall, including one for Best Director. Well, a few years ago, he was said to be winding down as a filmmaker, but as he told Minnie Stevenson, that's not happening yet.
Living in La La Land, there perhaps can be no greater form of escapism. The uplifting musical about falling in love in Hollywood has even charmed our cynical Brits. The film has 11 BAFTA nominations, more than any other.
On the street, you could lose everything.
Cut to its main competition and a story of stark contrast. I, Daniel Blake, a tale of life on benefits in the northeast of England, and the most nominated British movie, with 5, including Best Film. Today, its director, Ken Loach, spoke to 5 News about why at 80 he came back from semi-retirement to make this film.
The film before last was quite heavy, and I thought it was a bit much for an elderly gent. We had so many stories of people in the situation we show in the film who are fighting a state bureaucracy just to get what they're entitled to. Insofar as we were able to help them to have their voices heard, then yes, we'd like to share it with them.
No, you won't listen. To who, Ma? In fact, gritty realism seems to be a theme at this year's BAFTAs. Moonlight, the low-budget film about drug addiction in downtown Miami, has earned Naomi Harris a nomination and the film 4 in total.
You play with your friend?
Oh boy, we're gonna die out there. And by his own admission, Hugh Grant said today he wasn't exactly an awards season favourite, but was very pleased to be nominated for his role in Florence Foster Jenkins. His co-star Meryl Streep is, of course, a BAFTA pro, earning her 15th nomination, despite yesterday being called overrated by Donald Trump. But film critics say La La Land is the one to beat. So what does director Ken Loach think of his main competition?
I don't go to the cinema as often as I should, so I haven't seen it, but I will do, of course.
You've done nothing to be ashamed of.
Well, in 1 month's time at the BAFTAs, we'll find out whether a gritty British drama can steal the thunder of a Hollywood musical. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Now, before we go, Matt has joined us to tell us what's coming up on 5 News tonight. Hi.
Hi, Sean. We're going to have more on Jeremy Corbyn's plans to cap fat cat pay. I think we just knocked something over there under the desk. We're going to discuss whether his suggestion of limiting how much people can earn makes any sort of economic sense. Also, as Barack Obama prepares to give his farewell speech in Chicago, we'll be asking what will the president's legacy be. We discussed his wife's last week. And is this the most complicated snooker trick shot ever seen? I'm going to be talking to the people behind this intricate setup, which has now been watched more than 1 million times online. We'll show you the full thing at 6:30, Sean.
Meantime, you can fix the set.
Might be a snooker ball, actually.
Might be. That's it for now. Claire Nazir has the weather next. I'll see you again tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and Matt, of course, back at 6:30. Thanks for watching tonight. Bye for now.